we have an amazing guest. She is a former Planned Parenthood clinic director who is now a pro-life advocate. You know her probably already, but her name is Ab Johnson. She gave an incredible, visceral speech at the Republican National Convention. And we recently had one of her friends on, Monica Klein, who also just had all the praise in the world for her. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So my first question that I wanted to dive into was, what do you feel that people really are missing about Planned Parenthood? You know, the people who are sort of in the middle, because the fact that struck me is that Pew did some research where in a poll they found there were actually more men who were pro-abortion than there are women. And that was kind of starting to me. I mean, I think a reason for that is that men generally have sort of a guilt about taking any position on abortion because they've been told over and over again throughout their life that it's not their decision, it's not their body, so on and so forth. So there's sort of this, I think, standard position that men who are not political, haven't looked at the science, take of like, okay, I'm supposed to be choice. What do you think those people like that male and male, need to know about parenthood?
Well, Planned Parenthood they've been spinning the same talking points for over 20 years. I mean, I got involved with Planned Parenthood almost 20 years ago. And, the same crap that drew me into Planned Parenthood 20 years ago is the same crap they're still throwing out to the public. So they're saying to people, if women don't have access to Planned Parenthood, then they're not going to have anywhere to go for healthcare. Planned Parenthood is for poor women to get healthcare. And even just recently, I saw a bunch of graphics going around on social media. And, these graphics were saying, if you defund Planned Parenthood, you're not stopping abortion. You are taking away women's access to healthcare. And I feel like that's really what people need to understand about Planned Parenthood is this idea that they are this healthcare beneficiary to the masses is this huge lie. It's this they are just this propaganda machine that has been spinning this out for so many years. And that's the thing with lies, right? When people say a lie enough times, people will begin to believe it's true. And they have been saying these lies for so long, and the media has been spinning it for them for so long that everybody just thinks it's true. But the reality is that if you look over a 10-year time span, it is dramatic to see the drop in actual healthcare services that Planned Parenthood has been providing. The only service that Planned Parenthood provides that's continued to be on the increase has been abortion. Every other healthcare service that they provide, pap smears, birth control, STD testing, has been rapidly decreasing. So that shows you that their priority is and is only abortion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing I wanted to dive into is the funding issue, because there's obviously in the Democratic Party right now they're trying to give Heidemann and they to be able to fund missions. They want to be able to all this. There's also an argument to fully fund everything to do with Planned Parenthood is regardless of going directly for somebody's abortion. In essence, for your subsidized building, different employees, things like that Planned Parenthood have to cover if there was just zero government funding. So how do you feel about in general for Parenthood? Should they be zero from federal government?
Yeah, I mean, Planned Parenthood shouldn't be getting any money from our tax dollars as long as they are providing abortion services. Because this is why. People say, well, but they separate those services. They separate, money. Our tax dollars aren't going to pay for abortion. Sure. In theory, that's the way it's supposed to be. But in reality, they have one big bank account, guys. And all of this money goes into one big bank account. So that money is completely fungible. It's going toward whatever they want it to go toward. So it's not like they have it all separated out so that this service only goes toward abortion, or these paper towels only go toward abortion services, or these gowns only go toward family planning. It's not like that. It's just one big money dump at the end of the day. And so the money that comes out of that account is going to whatever they want it to go to. So if they want it to go toward abortion, it can go toward abortion.
Yep.
Yeah, including the Democratic Party donations to the tune of millions.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So,
And they do tons of advocacy inside of their clinics. So, they can't, for instance, say, we want you to vote Joe Biden inside of their clinics, but they do a ton of voter advocacy inside of their clinics. They do a ton of advocacy saying, don't you want abortion rights to be upheld in our government? Make sure you register to vote. Wink, wink. Don't you know what party is going to, keep abortion going? Well, make sure you vote for that party. They do a ton of that inside of their facilities. And they're all, they're a 501c3. Their healthcare facilities are a 501c3, but they're doing tons of voter advocacy for the Democratic Party inside of their facilities.
Yeah, it's not hard to work out the math on who they're rooting for. I mean, they're pretty open about it on social media and things like that. But even in the clinics, you don't need to say his name to know who's championing abortion. I mean, if you are, unless you're living under a rock, I think it's pretty apparent. Another thing that I think I wanted to bring up is just about fetal pain science. Because this is something that the left and Democrats in general, they love to talk about science until you get this issue. And I noticed something. So I actually recently had an argument with somebody who's they're sort of a Democrat activist, and they were making the argument that there's this JAMA study from 2005 said there's no fetal pain until 22 weeks. I think it is. That's studies from 2005, and I said, I gave you a study on climate from 2005, you'd laugh at me. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hand you more recent studies because the science has advanced. And we have the science now to back up that we have peripheral nerves formed at 6 to 8 weeks. We have more evidence ever that their brains are able to process the idea of being in danger because move away as early as 6 weeks from danger during procedures like in abortion, which I hate to even call a procedure, but when they feel that you're coming, they try to weigh and escape it. We have the science, we have the imaging, the 3D imaging back it up. And you can see in these images that they have what is referred to in one study from last year as like growth in nerve endings. So what is it going to take to break through that science into the mainstream to have people reconsider? Because I think the science is actually the very, very best argument for overturning something like Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think fetal pain is, I mean, we had women that would come in all the time, and that was their question. They would say, is this going to hurt my baby? Is abortion going to hurt my baby? That was the concern for the abortion. Not that it was, I mean, obviously it was going to kill the baby. But is it going to hurt the baby while it's killing the baby? Yeah. Because there's something in all of us that we don't want to hurt something. And it's sort of counterintuitive, right? Like we're okay to kill it, but we don't want to hurt it while we kill it. Right?
I think they want that affirmation that what doing here is not killing. The idea that it does hurt is them the feeling killing an inanimate object. That they're just sort of like making something disappear into Never Land. But the reality is,
even like if you look at the death penalty, like why did we get rid of the electric chair? Because it's considered inhumane, right? Exactly. So if we're gonna kill somebody, we want to do it painlessly. Right. Yeah. So even if a woman does consider, because I know plenty of women who are like, oh, I know abortion's killing a baby. I worked with plenty of women who were like, oh, I know it's killing a baby. So, but if we are going to kill a baby, then we want to do it in the most humane way possible. Right. We don't want it to feel pain while we're doing it. So this pain argument is pretty significant when we're talking to people who maybe do support abortion, because it does seem more heinous to kill something if it's going to be painful for that person as it dies. And so I do think that, you're right. We're learning more and more about the unborn human being in the womb. Just 10 years ago, we didn't know that the unborn had brainwaves as early as 8 weeks. We didn't know that the unborn had dreams in the womb. We didn't know that the unborn could hear their mother's voice in the womb. There's so many things. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't know that, or 15 years ago, we couldn't perform surgery on the unborn child in the womb. That's relatively new. So we're making advancements, on the unborn person in the womb. And so then it begs the question, all of these people their morality continues to change as science continues to advance. And that's a very slippery slope to live your life on.
Right.
Yep.
So,
and I would
it's the same with viability, right? There's people who are like, well, I'm okay with abortion up to the point of viability. Well, 10 years ago, a baby that was born at 30 weeks couldn't survive. Then it was 28 weeks. Then it was 24 weeks. Now we've got babies born at 22 weeks that are surviving. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where babies at 18 weeks are surviving. So your morality continues to change as medical science advances. That's really not the life that you want to live, man. Like you want your morality to be steadfast, like on a solid foundation.
Yeah, and I would note that, you brought up fetal operations. So a lot of people aren't aware of this. A lot of fetuses actually have operations on them. I call them fetuses, by the way. I prefer unborn baby, but I do fetuses because it's referred to so often in studies. But they do fetal operations on a pretty regular basis now, and they're doing them younger and younger and younger. Even 18 weeks now, they're doing them. And an interesting note about it is that they're giving them anesthesia when they do this. So, you can say that left-wing idea that they don't feel pain until they're 22 to 26 weeks. That doesn't with what the doctor actually do because where from their C that's not the case. And been refuted by NC over the years. So I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and ask a question. So one of the things that I was wondering is I've had a lot of conversations about coercion. In that process, in the abortion process, particularly when it's a child, it's an underage kid who does not have a parent present, who does not have somebody who does not have a stake in the game and a financial incentive. So have we had conversations in the pro-life movement, or you had them around this consent conversation? Is it true informed consent when you don't have an advocate as a child with you, or you're getting your information with somebody who stands to profit off of something that potentially harm you?
Yeah, so that's interesting. We've got states in the United States, about half of the United States, that do not require any sort of parental notification for an abortion. So what that means is, a 14-year-old girl could find out she's pregnant at 6 o'clock in the morning. She could make an abortion appointment at 9 o'clock. She could skip school, or the school nurse could take her to get an abortion. And by 3 o'clock that afternoon, she could be back at school. Her parents picked her up from school that day, and her parents could have absolutely no idea that in that same day, she just underwent a surgical abortion with significant risk to her body. Her parents have no idea. And in about half the states in the United States, that's acceptable. Now, if that same child needed to take an ibuprofen for a headache that day, the school nurse would have to call the parent to get permission. If that same child wanted to get her ears pierced down at the mall piercing place, they would have to have parental consent. If that same child wanted to lay in a tanning bed for a 10-minute tanning session, they would have to have parental consent.
Right.
But if she wants to go lie on an abortion clinic table, have surgical instruments inserted into her body, where one of the risks is death to her, her parent has no right to know that that took place.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
unbelievable. I mean, essentially,
Insane.
parents do not have rights. Their rights are completely at risk, eroding completely. With the schools trying to have access to our kids, and undermine parenting values, and now objecting healthcare decisions for children. It's really dangerous, and I'm glad we're bringing this to light for parents watching. We do have a lot of parents that don't know that this stuff happens. And I wanted to all touch on the fact that in my trafficking activism and research, I found that Planned Parenthood has been involved in a number of cases, maintain their merchandise from their girls in through Planned Parenthood to get them their abortion, to get them their birth control. Did you ever experience anything like that, or could you speak more on about them trafficking that goes to Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, so I mean, there were many times where women came in. I can't say for sure that they were being trafficked, but there were many times where certainly the signs were there that they were a victim of trafficking. But I can say that our response at Planned Parenthood was not to protect the girl who came in as a patient. Our response was to really provide a safe haven for the abuser. And we did it because we thought, oh, we're providing this non-judgmental environment. So by providing a non-judgmental environment, that meant we didn't ask questions. But by not asking questions, we were sending women back out to their abusers over and over again. And I mean, I can tell you, I remember one time, I remember one particular woman, I should say, who came in. She was, well known as a local prostitute. She could have very well been a victim of trafficking. She came in over and over and over again. And she would come in sometimes beaten. Every time she came in, she had a new sexually transmitted infection. She had been in for multiple abortions. She came in one time with her pimp.
Yeah. Then that would be a case of human trafficking for sure.
Yeah.
That meets the criteria. Absolutely.
We never did anything. When she came in with her pimp, I remember there being a conversation about, should we do something? Should we intervene? Should we something? I remember there being some sort of dialogue in the clinic, God, he's here, should we call the police? She wasn't a minor, or she was a grown woman.
Was there any training on how to deal with these situations if you suspected trafficking that Planned Parenthood said, hey, if you suspected, do this?
No. But then the consensus was just sort of like, well, I mean, she's grown. I mean, if she wanted to get out of it, I mean, she could walk away. I mean, that was sort of just well, I mean, she must like it. I mean, honestly, that was sort of how it was dealt with at the clinic, you know? Well, I mean, she must like it. Otherwise, she could tell us and we could help her. Otherwise, you know, she's not leaving, so she must like it. That, I mean, that's sort of, that's the thinking inside the clinic. And that's what Monica talked about, you know, when she went in and trained the people at Planned Parenthood. It was sort of like, well, if it's not this one, it'll be another one. You know, I mean, it's just sort of that attitude.
It's interesting because, you know, they in that same breath claim to be like the ultimate feminists. But you have trafficking victims come in being regularly used, cycling through, sometimes having 7, 8 abortions throughout long, you know, periods of time, and their answer to that is, will she like it? That needs to be the mentality. There's no training to refute her to say, hey, you know, you spot these things. This is what you get them to see, or get them help, or offer them a path, or even ask questions like that, and they're not asking questions.
No, I mean, we didn't ask questions. We didn't, because, you know, I'll tell you, we didn't care. I mean, if I'm honest with you, we didn't want to know. We didn't want to know. And that, I mean, that sounds terrible coming out of my mouth now, because now I am a person who deeply cares about women in that situation. But at the time, you know, and I've talked about this as sort of, because, you know, now I work with women who have worked in the abortion industry, and, you know, we help them get out and everything. And one of the things that we talk about regularly is we got into the abortion industry striving to care for women who were in these situations, right? But somehow over time, we developed disdain for these women who were coming to us for help. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know what like flipped that switch, but it was almost like we saw women as stupid. And so we just didn't care about them anymore. You know, if they were getting trafficked, if they were getting hurt, if they were having 10 abortions, we didn't care. It was just like, get in, get out, give us your money, go away, and I guarantee you we'll see you again.
Right.
Where do you think apathy came from? Is something that you think was core to Planned Parenthood's philosophy and the way they were treating people, and of the environment building there that was preaching this weird Frankenstein form of empowerment, where empowerment means, you know, allowing your body to be used and turning yourself into a vessel for all kinds of debauchery, and then treating the human life inside you as if it's is that like is what's coming from like the energy for all of those horrible things, and transferring on to the experiences of day-to-day Planned Parenthood?
I mean, I think it's just this cycle of dehumanization.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in order to be a person who participates in abortion, you have to dehumanize that life in the womb, right?
Right.
And you have to start dehumanizing yourself to be able to participate in it. And then you just start seeing these women as just vessels of these dehumanized children.
Right.
And so it's just this big, ugly cycle.
I really appreciate your honesty on this too, because, you know, a lot of people who were in your position would not, even if they did change positions and they became pro-life, wouldn't put things the way you're putting them, in just being, you know, kind of laying out the bare truth.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you're doing that, because I think it means a lot to viewers to actually hear the truth unfiltered and not have it, you know, cozied up to make anybody look better or do anything, because I think that's where people are really going to learn, is seeing like what the cold hard truth is.
Yeah.
I am interested, how you feel. And I don't know specifically on this issue, so we may disagree on this, and that's actually what I love about this show, is that we don't just like demand everybody agree with us. So I'm totally anti-abortion. I just think it's one of the most awful things in the world. It's like, I know this sounds strange, but like the worst things in the world to me are people hurting kids, whether they're unborn or and people who abuse animals and torture and all that stuff. I those people all in kind of category. I mean, a lot of people are weird because they're like more important, but for some reason my mind's always done that like I feel it takes the same brain to do those things. When people are fully informed, of what they're doing. So I'm curious how you feel about the school of thought that we need to be actually having birth control very available to people in order to prevent abortion, because that's sort of like, I look at reality and I see that I don't know that I'm going to be able to convince everybody to stop having abortions, but maybe the most incremental step to real change is saying, hey, look, here's tons of birth control that we will give you, but you're not allowed to have abortions anymore. So you need to use that. You're genuinely not ready to be a parent. You don't, and you're just going to have sex anyways. Let's give you the birth control you want, and abortion's off the table now. And, we're totally pulling that away. How do you feel about that? Do you think the birth control is something that we need to have accessible, or if not, why?
So I would say that birth control is pretty widely accessible right now, and it has been. I mean, I started on birth control when I was 15 years old, without my parents' knowledge, when I was in high school back a gazillion years ago. If it was accessible then, it's certainly a lot more accessible now.
I agree with you on that.
And I got it at no cost. So, and I did not come from a poor family. So, I would say that birth control is really accessible, and yet 54% of women who have abortions are using contraception at the time they get pregnant. Birth control has not been the answer that everybody has wanted it to be. And in the end, now we have women with breast cancer disease in their 20s, something that we've never had before, the acceptance of birth control. We have women developing osteoporosis in their 20s. We have women having strokes in their 30s. We have women developing heart disease in their 30s. We have women with profound undiagnosed infertility issues that we've never had before. And this has all happened since the introduction of the birth control pill. And women have been told, you have a health problem. Oh, here's a one problem. Here's a one pill fixes all for you.
Yeah.
And I know through my own personal experience and through my time in the abortion clinic, that the answer to women's healthcare needs and the answer to the abortion problem is not going to come in the form of birth control. We've had readily access to birth control, and yet we still have an incredibly high abortion rate in our country. And I'll say this. People are like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you look at a waiting, what this statistic means is this: if you look at a waiting room full of women waiting to have an abortion, more than half of them currently waiting to have an abortion are using birth control. And people go, that doesn't make any sense. Why? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. That seems like it would be the opposite, right? Well, we know that women who use birth control have higher rates of DVT, cancer, stroke, risk of heart disease. So if a woman is so desperate not to have a baby that she is willing to potentially give herself cancer, a stroke, thrombosis, heart disease, if she's so desperate not to have a baby that she is willing to poison herself with medications that will give her cancer, then if she does get pregnant, I can't imagine that it's too far of a step to say that she would abort that baby.
Do you wonder? I think really good point. I do wonder that if they knew it wasn't an option, they would be using it more responsibly. And really great point. The side effects of medicine, because that's something that in a perfect world, I would just say everything at the table, and everybody would get it. But it's sort of this thought of like reality versus world that you want and I want would have it, But in reality, I do wonder if they knew there was no option for abortion, if they would be more responsible with the way they take it. Because I think a reason why there would be more of the people in there, sitting waiting for an abortion who are technically on it, is because there's so many of these young people who, they're on birth control, but they miss 3-4 days at a time. They'll forget a day here, forget a day there, or the condom breaks and they just, they continue doing what they're doing. I think that maybe there's a lack of responsibility because they all feel like they have a safety net of abortion. Mm-hmm. And if we take that safety net away and we say, you don't have that, I do think we'd see an increase, at least in responsible use of it. But at the same time, you're totally right that it's not the answer, because the answer has to be something much greater than that. That's a societal shift in the culture of life and how we value life. But, I struggle with getting there. Are we going to leap there, or is it going to be taking, little steps down the road until we get to that point? And I look at a lot of societal change that occurred, and I feel like so much of it happened by taking those little steps. And I feel like, maybe there's incremental ways to get to that place we want to go to. Do you think that that's like sort of, and I won't be offended, but do you think that's like a naive thought on my part, or do you think
I'm not in a war against birth control. Okay. Yeah. That's not my fight. I'm not in a war against birth control. I will tell you this though. I have 8 children, 1 adopted. I have had 3 unplanned pregnancies on perfect use birth control. 1 was a Depo-Provera shot that you cannot screw up unless you miss your shot. And I did not miss my shot. So I've had 3 unplanned pregnancies while using birth control perfectly. I have been using natural family planning for 10 years of my life. I have never had an unplanned pregnancy while using natural family planning. I think one of the problems in our society today is that we don't teach young people about their bodies. And so instead of teaching them about their bodies and the beauty of their bodies and the beauty of their fertility, we stick them on a pill, or we stick them on birth control, or we throw a condom at them. Instead of saying, we need to teach you about your fertility. And, one of the things I will say about this is that we saw in Texas, where I live, that there was at one point in time, what we were talking about earlier about minor consent for abortion. And at one point in time, there were no minor notification laws on the books for Texas. And once we were able to pass a minor consent bill in the state of Texas, not only did minor abortions go down in the state of Texas, but minor pregnancies went down in the state of Texas. And so what that showed us was that it wasn't just that people weren't getting abortions. What that showed us is that these kids, once they realized that, oh, crap, if we get pregnant, abortion's not an option for us, they were making decisions not to participate in the risky behavior that could get them pregnant in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
So it wasn't that birth control usage didn't go up either in the state. It was just that kids were making the decision, hey, listen, we don't have an easy way out of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we don't have a way out of this, maybe we should take some personal responsibility and make some better decisions and not engage in risky behavior in the first place. And my God, what an incredible idea, right? That we all just make some smart personal decisions. And if you don't have an easy way out, or if your easy way out is killing another living human being, maybe we should just make better decisions in the first place and not engage in risky behavior. And if you're not ready to have a child, then just don't engage in that behavior. I mean, we have been taught from a very young age, unfortunately, through sexual risk avoidance education, that we are just wild beasts, that we are just wild animals that cannot control ourselves. And so by the time, when you hit puberty, you must put your kids on some sort of birth control. And our kids have bought into that lie. But the reality is that we can control ourselves, that we don't have to be put on birth control the moment that we start our periods, and that we need to be taught that from a very young age. But one of the first ways that we need to be taught about that is being taught fertility education when we start going through puberty. Not that we're, one thing about birth control that's interesting to me is birth control is the only pill, right? Can you imagine if you had like a great working heart and you went to your cardiologist and you said, Doc, my heart is working so great. I've got great blood pressure. My cholesterol is fantastic. Can you give me a pill to screw that up? I don't want my work. I want to be an AFib. I want to have an irregular heartbeat.
Right.
No doctor in their right mind would do that. Right. But that's exactly what birth control does to a person's system. Fertility is a sign of health. But women go to the doctor each and every day, thousands every single day. And they go to the doctor and they go, Doc, my fertility works fantastic. My fertility is a sign of health. Can you give me a pill and screw that up for me? Can you give me a pill and break my fertility?
Yeah.
Right.
And each and every day doctors go, sure, I'll do that for you. And women, they do it and they see that as normal. And our society has told women that is normal and that it is healthy to have irregular fertility. And that is wrong.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I can completely agree with that. And what time is it? Because we normally have our clock here. I want you to be respectful of the time.
It's broken. If we have to let you go, just let us know.
What time? What time is it? I have no idea. You good for one more question?
One more question. You go for it.
Okay. Well, I didn't get an answer from Marissa. I'm not sure. Abby, are we good for one more question? Or
yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. One more question. So, I those are two separate, things, because I think that it boils down to education. But one point I was going to make about, the birth control, and I think that term's confusing because some people associate it just with pills, and some people get, anything that controls family planning. But I noticed that in a lot of these conversations, it is centered around the woman, not the male participant. And we know that, we believe in science, biology, it takes a male to make a baby. I'm wondering, as part of Planned Parenthood education, and, I remember sex ed in school, I do not remember the emphasis on, both partners using some sort of protection, whether that natural family planning, which we talked about, but it seemed like condoms were optional if the woman is doing something. And I wonder if that was switched, where the education was that both individuals are accountable, responsible for both of their bodies. Just the woman, responsible for the shielding of it, but the male also say, hey, regardless of whether you're on pill or not, or taking them if or not, or you're doing your natural family plan or not, or IUD not, I will use condom. And again, it's that consent conversation, because I believe in abortion. So we will be using condom. I think there's just not emphasis on the male role in this, and them saying, I will wear protection too. If you have to take this risk, I'm taking this risk. What do you think about?
So that's really what modern feminism has done to the role of the male, right? Is modern feminism has silenced the voice of the male. And so they want to take away the voice of the male, but then they also want to cry victim when the male doesn't stand up. So they sort of want their cake and, you know, they want to eat it too. So they want to have their cake and eat it too. So, yeah. So birth control has basically put so fertility is supposed to be shared, right? Fertility is supposed to be a shared experience between a woman and a man. And that's what natural family planning, that's what they talk about constantup in natural family planning. That's why natural family planning is such a beautiful thing. But birth control has essentially put up a barrier between a male and a female and has made it solely the responsibility of the woman. So I can't tell you how many times. In fact, the first time that I got pregnant, which was my first abortion, I remember, you know, telling my boyfriend the time I'm pregnant, and his first question was, "Would you miss a pill?" Right? It was my responsibility, obviously my fault, right? Like he didn't have any input there, right? So, but I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people, you know, women telling their partners, women telling their husbands, "I'm pregnant," and the man having that sort of response. Like, well, what did you do? Did you not take your pill? What did you do? Right? Because birth control separated that shared responsibility and put the primary role of fertility on the shoulders of the woman. Okay.
I would say that's almost all of it.
Do what?
I would say it's almost all of it on his shoulders, because as male, I know, like most of the men that I have talked to about this, they're just, they don't even think of it. They think well, if she gets, she's willing with it. I do think that that personal responsibility, someone like you said, have to be cognizant of the fact that we're responsible for this, and not just during this process of the baby coming to life, but afterwards. We are equal partners in creating this life, and we have to step up both before and afterward, and make sure we're doing our part in every segment of this process.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So then you've got, so then so the fertility is the sole responsibility of the woman, right? And that's the way she wants it. If I'm perfectly honest, that's the way mainstream feminists want it. Okay. It's my body. It's my responsibility. Okay. Then she gets pregnant and she does not want the man's input on that either. Right. That's her responsibility. It's her body. It's her baby. It's her choice. Right. But then if she chooses to parent the baby, oh, well, then he better step up.
Right.
Okay. Well, all of this should be shared. And that's the way that this whole process was meant to be. Fertility should be shared. The experience of pregnancy, while that woman is the one who's gestating and carrying the baby, that experience should be shared. The parenting of that child should be shared. But mainstream feminism is such a hack. It's such a lie. It's such a joke. And, that's the way that the feminists have won it. That's how they've wanted it for all of these years. And now they have it. But then when a man decides, well, you haven't wanted me all this time, so now I don't want to take care of my child. Well, then they're like, oh, he's a deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
Right.
And you want to talk unequal rights. It's men, during that process of say you get a girlfriend pregnant and you guys have been together for a year, she can decide to have an abortion. You have no say over your child's life. You have no chance to protect them. And that in itself, feminists love to talk about, sex, the genders having different rights. That's a different right. They have more rights than we do when it comes to protecting our own children. And that's something that I do think needs to change. I think that both parents need to have the right to protect their child.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's something that women, they don't want. They don't want the men stepping up and protecting their children in the womb. But boy, if you don't step up and pay that child support once that baby's born, then they're going to come after you. Yeah. Well, that same protective instinct that men have for their children in the womb or outside of the womb should also be given to them when their children are in the womb.
Yep.
Absolutely.
100%. Thank you so much for being with
Thanks
us.
so much
If-
for great conversation.
Do you have to leave right this second for your next interview?
Yeah,
If you
it's
do,
over 30 minutes. I don't have like the watch.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm so glad to be on with you guys.
We want to drop your website really quick, let everybody know where they can find out more about what you're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, it's my website is abbyj.com. abbyj.com.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, Abby.
Keep up the fight. You're doing amazing things and changing hearts, as we saw in your recent speech. Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. We had so many more questions, but sometimes the conversations and style of we do allows us to kind of naturally come. So we just go with them sometimes. So hopefully get Abby back on his point, or get to talk to another in Parenthood Exeter who used to work there. I have so many questions about what's on inside the walls of Planned Parenthood, in the mind people that do this kind of work on a daily basis. I'm sure you do too. So hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll keep doing stuff like this and